What would you do if your husband humiliated you in front of 40 guests at your own home? Sarah's answer changed everything in just one moment. Before we dive into this incredible story, if you enjoy stories about justice, empowerment, and people standing up for themselves, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us bring you more amazing content like this.
My husband raised his glass in front of 40 guests and said, "To my biggest mistake, my wife." Laughter echoed through the room. I stood up, grabbed the sealed folder that was under my chair, and said, "Then you won't mind this." In that instant, his face collapsed. 3 hours later, he was sitting alone in that empty room, trying to understand how he lost everything in a single toast. My name is Sarah. I'm 42 years old, and I met Robert when I was 25. He was a law intern. I worked as a financial analyst at a mid-sized company. We met at a Friday happy hour, one of those you go to without much expectation, but end up staying late talking with someone special. Robert was funny, ambitious, and had this way of talking about the future that made me believe anything was possible. We got married 2 years later in a simple ceremony that cost about $10,000. Money was tight, but we were happy. Back then, we shared everything: the bills, the dreams, Sunday night pizzas. In the first 5 years, things were good. He studied for the bar exam at night while I worked during the day. I paid most of the bills, about $3,500 a month, while he dedicated himself to his studies. I never complained. It was our joint project. "When I graduate, we'll take off together," he always said, hugging me in the kitchen of our rented 2-bedroom apartment. And he passed. He started at a small firm, then got promoted. In 6 years, he was already a partner. That's when things started to change, subtly at first. He stopped asking me about my day, started coming home later. The kitchen conversations turned into monologues about his cases, important clients, strategic meetings. But I didn't know that the comment he made that Thursday, "You wouldn't understand, it's a lawyer thing," would be the first of many that would turn me into a stranger in my own home. The change was so gradual that I barely noticed when I stopped being a partner to become decoration. Robert started introducing me differently at events. Before it was my wife Sarah, then it became just my wife. Then, on some occasions, he simply didn't introduce me. There was a company party of his about 8 months before the dinner. I had bought a new dress, turquoise green. I spent $450, which came from my salary. I spent the afternoon getting ready. When we got out of the car, Robert looked at me and said, "Try not to talk too much about work today, okay? These people are on another level." I stayed quiet all night, literally. I drank my wine, smiled when necessary, and watched my husband shine. He told jokes, laughed loudly, made everyone feel important. With me at home, he barely looked up from his phone. 3 weeks later, he came home at 11 p.m. I was in the living room waiting. "We need to talk about the household finances," I said. He sighed, that tired sigh of someone dealing with something tedious. "Sarah, I make 10 times more than you now. Do you really think your opinion about finances matters?" That hurt more than any slap, because it was true. He earned about $35,000 a month, while I earned $5,000. But I remembered when it was my $5,000 that paid for everything, when it was my savings that bought his first suit for the job interview. I started writing things down, not out of revenge, but because I needed to understand if I was going crazy. I noted each comment, each time he rolled his eyes when I spoke, each dinner he canceled at the last minute because something more important came up. In April, there were 17 canceled dinners, 17 times when I cooked, set the table, and ate alone, watching his food get cold. In May, he forgot my birthday. He didn't really forget. He remembered 3 days later and gave me $500 in cash. "Buy something you like," he said, as if he were giving a tip. It was in June that I found the messages. I wasn't looking, I swear. His phone rang while he was in the shower, and the screen lit up on the bed. "Yesterday was amazing. I can't wait to see you again." It was from a number without saved name. My heart raced. I opened the conversation. Months of messages, dinners, hotels, promises. He was having an affair with a lawyer at the firm, Michelle, 28 years old, recently graduated, the same one he always mentioned as very talented and with a promising future. I sat on the bed holding that phone for 15 minutes. I didn't cry. You know when the pain is so great that you become numb? That was it. When Robert came out of the bathroom, I put the phone back where it was. He didn't even notice.
That night, lying next to him while he snored, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront him yet. I wasn't going to make a scene. I was going to do something different. I was going to prepare myself. The following Monday, I scheduled an appointment with Dr. Jennifer Thompson, a divorce lawyer that a friend had recommended years ago, half-jokingly. I paid $200 for the first consultation out of my own pocket. "Tell me everything," she said, picking up a notepad. And I told. I told about the 17 years together, about the first 5 years when I supported the household alone while he studied, about how my salary, which he now despised, had paid for all his specialization courses, totaling $28,000, about the apartment we bought together 5 years ago, whose $70,000 down payment came from my inheritance when my grandmother passed away. "Do you have proof of all this?" she asked. I did. I had always been organized with papers. I had the transfer receipts, the old bank statements, which showed every penny I invested in him, in us. For 3 months, we worked on the papers. We gathered everything. The financial contribution during his training years, the apartment that was in both names but whose down payment was mine, even the consulting company he opened 2 years ago and that operated inside our apartment, technically using our common assets as a base. Dr. Thompson was good, very good. "He'll have to recognize your contribution, Sarah. You weren't just a wife, you were an investor, a business partner, and he owes you much more than respect." Meanwhile, at home, the situation worsened. Robert barely disguised it. He would come home smelling of a perfume that wasn't mine. He smiled at his phone. One August night, I was in the kitchen and heard him laughing on the phone in the living room. His voice was soft, affectionate, the way he used to talk to me years ago. "Honey, I have to go. My wife is here." That went through me. It wasn't just the fact that he called someone else honey. It was the way he said "my wife." Cold, distant, as if I were just an inconvenience that was disrupting his conversation, as if I were the other woman, the intruder, the annoying obligation he had to put up with to keep up appearances. He had affection in his voice for her and had irritation in his voice when talking about me. In September, he announced he was going to have a party at home. "It's important, Sarah. There will be some partners, some clients. I need the house to be impeccable." He spent $12,000 on catering, decoration, drinks. He didn't even ask if I agreed. After all, it was his money. I spent that week arranging everything. I hired an extra cleaning lady, organized every detail. On the night of the party, I put on my best dress, black, elegant, and went downstairs. Robert looked at me and said, "You're going to stay quiet today, right? I don't want you to embarrass me." It was there, looking at the man I loved for 17 years telling me not to embarrass him, that I knew there was nothing left to save. Something inside me broke at that moment, not from sadness, but from absolute clarity. I went up to the bedroom, looked in the mirror, took a deep breath. "You deserve more than this," I whispered to my own reflection. And I did deserve it. But I had no idea that that night would change everything in a way that I wasn't even expecting. The party was beautiful. 40 people, all important in his world. Lawyers, judges, businessmen. I circulated with a polite smile, offering appetizers, collecting empty glasses. The perfect wife, the trophy wife. Around 10 p.m., Robert asked for attention, picked up a glass of champagne, a bottle that cost $800, and made a toast. He talked about the firm's success, about new contracts, about how proud he was to have gotten where he had. Then he looked at me and smiled. That smile I knew so well, but which was now full of malice. "And I want to make a special toast," he said, raising the glass higher. "To my biggest mistake,"
He made a dramatic pause. My wife. Laughter. Genuine laughter from people who found it funny, some nervous, but most thought it was a couple's joke, one of those from people who have been together for a long time. I looked around, saw the laughing faces. I saw Michelle in the corner of the room trying to hide a little smile. I saw my husband, the man I helped build, publicly humiliating me in my own home. And you know what I felt? Calm. A cold and crystalline calm. I stood up slowly, went up the stairs while people were still laughing, still making comments. I entered the desk room, opened the closet. There was the folder that Dr. Thompson had given me 2 weeks ago. Keep it in a safe place, Sarah, and use it when you're ready. I was ready. Now I grabbed the folder, felt its weight in my hands. Inside was everything. 3 months of silent work. Every receipt, every proof that I wasn't just a wife, every penny I invested in him documented. The divorce was already ready, already filed. He just needed to know. I went back down. I walked up to Robert, who was still standing there with that arrogant smile, thinking he had made the joke of the year. "If I'm your biggest mistake," I said, my voice calm but firm, audible throughout the room that was now silent, "then you won't mind this." I placed the folder on the table, right in front of him. I opened it. The divorce papers were on top, already signed by me, already filed. He just needed to sign. His face literally collapsed. All that confidence, all that arrogance evaporated in seconds. He picked up the papers with trembling hands. "Sarah, what is this?" he whispered. Everyone was watching now. No one was laughing. "It's the divorce papers, Robert. As you can see, they're all filled out with a fair division of assets." I picked up the second page and showed it to him. 50% of the apartment is mine because I paid the down payment. 25% of your company is mine because it operated inside our common assets for the first 2 years, and you owe me $60,000 referring to the costs I paid for your education and specializations." He was pale. You can't." "I can, and I already have. The papers are already with the judge. You have until Friday to sign, or the process continues without your signature." I looked around at the guests. "I apologize for the embarrassment. Enjoy the party. After all, it was $12,000 worth of food and drinks." I grabbed my purse and left. Just like that, I simply left my own home for the last time as his wife. That was 1 year and 4 months ago. Robert tried to contest everything, of course. He hired 3 different lawyers. He spent more than $50,000 in fees. In the end, he had to accept almost everything Dr. Thompson proposed. The judge was clear. My financial contribution during his training years was undeniable. I received $185,000 in the final division. It's not a fortune, but it's the recognition that I wasn't just a wife. I was a partner. I was an investor. I was the person who believed in him when he was just an intern with dreams. I learned, through mutual friends, that the romance with Michelle lasted another 3 months after the divorce. She left him when she realized he was no longer the successful lawyer she met. He was just a 50-year-old man, bitter, who lost half his assets and all his reputation. Robert tried to call me a few times, sent messages. Once, 6 months ago, he showed up at my new apartment, small but mine. He wanted to talk. I didn't open the door. Today, I work at the same company. I still earn my $5,000, but now when I look at that amount, I don't see little. I see dignity, I see independence, I see the difference between having money and having value. Sometimes I think it could have ended differently, that I could have confronted him earlier, that we could have tried therapy, that love could have won. But then I remember that toast, those laughs, and I realized that love had died a long time ago. I just hadn't accepted it. I don't regret the decision, not the way. I regret having let so much time pass, having accepted each small humiliation until they accumulated in that folder, not valuing myself before. But I learned. I learned that respect is not negotiable,
and that sometimes the biggest mistake is not marrying the wrong person, it's staying married after they show who they really are. Robert made a toast to his biggest mistake that night, but the biggest mistake was his, losing someone who truly loved him for someone who only loved what he had become.